you guys a heads up. We obviously you have never seen my face on here, but once. Dr. Sharon is out of town, and so she's literally on a plane as we speak, so she wouldn't be able to host us today. So I told her, I got you. Don't worry about it. Some of you have met me, some of you have not. My name is Nikia, and I'm the operations administrator. So I help kind of bring some order to the chaos and all the procedures across all departments, and just kind of help with the relationship between all our departments and all of you who are, we get to be of service to you in the best way possible and resource you to do the good work that you do. So I get to make sure that that process runs smoothly. And so today I'm playing host, but also Michael had a family emergency today, so Janine jumped in and she's going to work on some board stuff, specifically bylaws. So the topic is a little bit different than we had planned, but we're still going to do some good nuggets. Janine is the best at what she does, and she's going to make sure that you get some good notes. So I hope you got your recording happening or you're taking some notes, because some gems will be dropped. So without further ado, I'm going to let Janine do her thing. Go on, big sis, do your thing.
Well, hey, everybody. It is good to see everybody in the room today. Like she said, I'm jumping in here today because Michael did have an emergency. So, we do what we can do, and we're going to make it happen today. And please, today, we can be a lot interactive if we need to. Stop me, ask questions, whatever it is you need, because what I want you guys today is to get an understanding of these bylaws. A lot of times people say, okay, write my bylaws and let's go. But there's a lot more to those bylaws, because bylaws are very important and they play a very important part in your organization itself. So feel free to ask questions, stop me. If I go too fast, because sometimes I get carried away, slow me down, just let me know. But just before we get started, one of the things we love to do is we want to hear about any wins. Anybody have any great wins they want to talk about today? Anybody get any grants? Anybody get any good news? We want to hear about it. I know somebody got some good news today. If it's not grant related.
Okay, I'll share.
All right.
Can you guys hear me?
I
So
can.
we are fairly new, and I'm happy to report that we officially have our monies, and we officially did our first back to school collab event, and everything went really, really well. So I'm happy to report that.
That's amazing. Amazing. You did the first event. Miss Angela, you did the first event.
Yeah, so we did a collab, and also it took us a while to get that grant money in, and finally everybody has officially had their first payday, and following that great event. So that was 2 wins for us back to back.
Woo, woo, woo. Exciting. I saw somebody else singing in there. Miss Florence, go ahead. Go ahead, Miss Flo.
Yes, we have been with the nonprofit plug. I would say we are fresh, brand new, soaking wet, okay? And we're super excited, but we actually received our first grant already. Just super excited about that. So we're super excited about the team that we work with. We absolutely love the nonprofit plug, but y'all, when I told y'all, it was like, are you serious? My mouth dropped. I was like speechless. And anyone that knows, that's very hard to do.
Sharon told me that. She said, I never saw Flo speechless.
I know, right? Sharon was like, you're not saying anything. Sorry, guys.
All right. But we're excited about that. Anybody else got any wins for us? We love hearing good stuff.
So this is Kathy Long. So we took just kind of what we thought was going to be our regular meeting to just meet another organization that does similar things that we do, and it turned into this amazing collaboration. And they're going to share resources and sponsors and information, and it was a very unexpected big win. So
goodness. Good deal.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about. We absolutely love that. Miss Stacy, how are you today? It's good to see you back on.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just curious what kind of organizations you two have.
What we do is we run transitional homes.
Okay.
We run transitional homes. That's what we do. The JHSG is the name of it. It's Joy, Hope, Structure, and Guidance. And we run it just a little bit differently than other transitional homes because we do have a housing plan initiative actually structured for those people to actually be a transitional home and not to get there and just stay. So
Very
yeah.
cool. Very cool. I just like to hear what everybody's doing and what the organizations are. Thank you.
Miss Angela, what you do?
Yes, so we are a mentorship and we also deal with restorative justice. So folks and youth that are coming out and need some guidance and help with, returning to life and the world, we are going to be there to support them and kind of hand walk them through their new life.
And what's the name of the organization?
This is the Action Project.
Okay.
We can't wait to get back with you guys.
Great. I love that restorative justice. I do that work myself.
And I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't realize you were on that you had spoken out too. Go ahead.
Oh, me, Kathy?
It's Kathy.
We're Teens for Teens Help, and we're an online platform that shares stories of recovery, educational and informational videos, and lots of resources.
Awesome.
All great things that everyone's doing. Well, since they shared who they are, why don't you share who you are, Miss Stacy, with the group?
I have a nonprofit called Whole Family Mediation, and we provide mediation services to families. We also provide a communication skills class to teenagers to help them learn how to set boundaries, ask for what they need, have serious and difficult conversations. And we're focused right now for our mediation in the foster care area, but we can mediate any family situation.
All right. Would anybody else like to let us know what we're doing, what you're doing? Olive, Rome, Eddie, Maurice, any of you guys want to tell us what's going on here with your organizations, just to give us a little background information?
Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry.
You're fine.
My name is Sandy. I work for Olive Support Services. We're based out of the Antelope Valley. We cover all of SPA 1. So we offer court-recognized classes for justice-involved individuals and parents with open DCFS cases. We offer the anger management, parent education, and domestic violence intervention free of charge. We also help with immediate needs like emergencies, like if they have a bill that's past due and they're threatening to shut off their water or whatever it may be. But it is limited to our active
participants. Okay, very good. This is good stuff. Mr. A, tell us about yours.
Hi everyone, my name is Eddie, and actually what I do is I help the elderly or disabled, elderly 65 years or over, disabled, widows, or military active or veterans. I help them fix up their houses for free, and I help them clean up their houses for free. The program that I put together so that therefore no elderly person is left behind regarding the upkeep of their homes. Come across me that have helped that need the service, and it was a tremendous blessing. So it's something I've been doing, and I'm actually going to be collaborating that, and I just got certified to become a foster parent. So I'm going to be collaborating that with the foster youth who are exiting the program, and so I'm going to be using the foster kids that are about to exit to bring them out and learn training that pertains to repairing houses, whether it be construction, framing, electrical, and offer these incentives for them so they can, when they exit, As you guys all know, that when they exit the program, they're left homeless. So this will give them a step in the direction where they can sustain themselves as they learn a trade and give back to the community by helping out the elderly.
Okay. Nice, nice. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, we're going to move on here. And what we're going to do, and like I said, please, today we're going to talk about bylaws. We're going to talk about the reasons for those bylaws, what they entail, what needs to be in there, the language, all of that good stuff. So again, make sure you ask questions, because that's what I'm here to do, to kind of help you guys navigate these waters, because many people have bylaws and they don't even know what they mean, or they're not even lawful. So let's talk about it. I'm going to share my screen right quick, so everybody can get a chance to kind of see what we got going on, and let me know when you are able to see the screen. Are you guys able to see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, very good. Very good. So how many of you all have ever really read your bylaws or know what they really are? Just in the chat, you could say 1 if you have, 2 if you haven't, because you'd be surprised at how many people have never really looked at them or even understand. I should say how many people understand their actual bylaws. Okay. Rome says, he didn't read them. Listen, join the club. Many not done that. Well, we'll talk a little bit about what these bylaws are. The bylaws, of course, like it says, they're nonprofit bylaws, are a set of rules on how to govern your nonprofit organization, pretty much. That's what it's saying. And by this, what happens is that when you are, it's kind of like just making sure everybody knows the flow of your nonprofit. So they need to be lawful in your state and also follow the federal guidelines as well. Some states make you have more information in it than others, but there is one thing that every state has to have, and it's called a dissolution statement, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. And then once you have your bylaws up there, at the very first board meeting, to make them official, they need to be voted upon to make sure all the verbiage and language is good there. All right, so Miss Stacy, she said they need to add some things. Perfect, perfect. That's what we're here to do. That is what we're here to do. Okay, so next slide is talk about what's included in those bylaws. What's included in the bylaws are the name and the purpose of your organization, of course, your board of directors, not necessarily their names, but who they are, like your president, your treasurer, things like that. And we use language like initial, and your initial folks are always going to be on the paperwork that you have. So you'll have that, but it's not necessarily their name and information in the actual bylaws. What the officers are. Your officers are your, usually they start out being your president, your treasurer, and your secretary. As your board grows, it may be a vice president in there, or, assistant secretary, things like that. I've been in places where they have a first vice chair, a second vice chair, and a third vice chair. So, interesting enough, but those are very large. Usually they're larger organizations that have that. It will have information about your meetings, the frequency of the meetings, how long they should go. If they're, you can even put in there the amount of time. You can say the meeting should be 1 hour once a month. But here's the thing. You must have 4 meetings a year, minimum. And they have to be spaced out at least once a quarter. So you can't have 2 meetings in December and 2 meetings in July. That's not lawful. They have to be 1 per quarter. So And then we talk about membership. Membership is more of if you have people that require certain things to be a part of that group. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And if you have committees, usually committees, some people have them and some people don't, depending on the size of your board. And then, of course, we have to have conflicts of interest. It's just, making sure and like I said, disclosing information. And then, of course, amendments. Amendments have to happen because your board never stays the same. Things always happen. Your organization changes. It changes with the times. And then indemnification is more so just protecting board members, protecting the board members as well as protecting the organization, against personal liability and things. And that would include how you keep a board member, as far as their conduct. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then the dissolution statement as well. The dissolution statement is something you have to have. It kind of tells how you get, what happens once your nonprofit is no longer a nonprofit. All right. So we'll start with the easy stuff. The name and purpose. Oh, I'm sorry. Do I need to stop? Any questions? And also you can put them in the chat because Nakia will keep up with the chat for me. And when I need to stop, so you can either put your hand up or you can put something in the chat. Either way, we'll get to you. So pretty much in your bylaws, the first part of your bylaws should always say who you are, the name of your organization. So it would be the Action Project, and the Action Project is located at X, whatever your address is. And then it would say your statement of purpose, which is usually your mission statement. And whatever it is that your mission statement is, that's your whole first paragraph. Your name of the organization, your location, and the statement of who you are. Boom. That's what your first bullet point or your number one, whichever way you want to put it together. Then, of course, the next thing would be, let's talk about the structure. Here's where we put information in about your board members, okay? So the number of board members on an initial board is generally 3. You can have more, but it can't be less than 3. So that's what we would call your initial board. So when you get your first board, we call that the initial board. Initial members usually have different privileges than those that are not. However, I usually tell people to let it be just the initial founder. The initial founder should be the one that has the most protection. Now, if all 3 of them are the founders and they all came up with this together, then they would do it. But the best way to do it is the initial founders, but they are the initial board members. So we talk about how board members are elected or appointed. Of course, the initial board is you guys got together and now you guys are board members. There's no election involved in that. But what you need to put in the bylaws is an amount of time for the initial board members to serve. I tell people 3 to 5 years tops. 5 years is a long time. 3 years is probably really good, because it gets you a chance to get in there to get soaking wet and make things happen. Sometimes when people move a little slower, then we go 5 years. But 3 years is like, you should have been able to move some stuff, turn around. If not, you really do have the wrong board members. Then you talk about the length of the board members' terms. What will they be? Will they be 1 year or 2 years? I suggest 2 years. Some people do them every year, but I always suggest at least 2 years. Some people have board members longer than that, but I would always say no longer than 4 years. 2 years is the best number because somebody can get things done in 2 years. And you have to say, here's the other caveat to that. When you're doing these, when you're saying they're 2-year terms, how many, you put in there, how many consecutive terms are they allowed to serve? Or is there an amount of terms they're allowed to serve? So if I say, okay, if somebody is elected the board, they can serve for 2 consecutive terms, which would be, if you have 2 years terms, it would be 4. 2 consecutive terms. Now, the longer the term, the shorter the amount of times you should allow them to run, because it becomes too long. If someone has a 4-year term, I would tell you, no, it should be 1 term at a time. They have to go out, let somebody else come in and do it that way. Because when you do it that way, a person stays on too long. 1 and 2-year terms, you need to set an amount of time so they can serve 2 consecutive terms. If it's a 1-year term, you might say they can serve 4 consecutive terms, because that's just 4 years. So you have to look at it the way you have your bylaws set up. But then it doesn't mean they can't come back and serve again after sitting down. And you can say after X amount of terms, they can come back and run again. And it may be after 1 term, but they do have to have a period of time where someone else serves. So those are things you think about in that. And then what are your procedures for filing vacancies? If we have a vacant seat and we really need to get it filled, how do we go? What is our procedure for going to get someone to sit in that seat temporarily while we find somebody else, or until it's time to elect again? Those kind of things. So you have to look at that. And of course, like we talked about last week, the roles and responsibility of board members, we put them in there. We say, hey, board members are responsible for A, B, C, D, and E. If you are an officer, they will show this is the president and this is what they do. This is what the secretary does. And this is what the treasurer does. Anybody got any questions so far? Anything? You guys are too quiet. Are you just taking this stuff all in, or, you know?
You just that good.
You're thorough.
Well, and I think people don't understand, you need to be thorough when it comes to this stuff. And many of my groups that I work with myself, they don't, the reason why before they've come to me, they're not successful is because they don't even understand what they've gotten themselves into. So that's what I do. I want to make sure you know what you've gotten yourself into and everything that's around. So that's what we do. So the next slide is going to talk about the, oops. The next slide is talking about the, didn't switch on me. Yes, it did. It didn't look like it switched. The officers. And again, we kind of talked about that a little bit. It just talks about the titles of the officers, the duties and responsibility of each, how each are elected or appointed. It's kind of the same thing as the regular board members, but we just have to talk about how they're done. Now, there may be a slight difference in how you choose your officers to fill the board position, because there may be some criteria for that. It may be, we're not going to put somebody off the street in an officer position. It needs to be somebody in good standing, perhaps, and things like that. So that's how we have to look at that. It may be that, you know, they may have had to have served on the board X amount of years to be able to be considered to be able to sit in an officer seat if they are appointed. Remember, this is an appointment, not an elected officer. So, and in terms of office procedure, I think last week, and I think it may have been you, Miss Stacy, who asked about not wanting to be removed from their board. I believe it was you. It was someone asked, but when this is where you put the information in. The clause I like to use is that the initial founder of the organization can never be removed from the board unless it is some egregious act. And we list, you know, examples of such. And it has to be voted on by the board. Or if it, you know, if it puts the organization at risk for danger and things like that. But we put that language in there so that somebody just cannot come in and say, let's vote them off the board. They can't just vote you off the board for nothing. But I have seen that done. I'll give you an example. I worked with a group, great group of people. The initial president was there. The initial president had some issues with one of the board members, but this board member went around and actually got enough votes to vote this initial board member off the president. So there was nothing. She was like, I've got to go. I'm going to sue. I was like, there's nothing you can sue about because you didn't have that language in the bylaws. You got to have that language in the bylaws. This is why it's very important to have information in there as such. So if you're talking about different things that need to happen, you got to have that stuff in there. I mean, because your bylaws are just that. And if you take it in front of a judge, they're going to read them just for what it says in there. And if there's no protection for you, then it's going to be a bad problem and a bad day for that person. So that's kind of what happened when we worked with that one. Next slide. Meetings and membership. Now, the meetings and membership, easy stuff. So meetings just tell you how frequently you'll have the meetings. Most people, we just usually say in there stuff like we have it once a quarter, but other meetings as scheduled, unless you want to put in there, we have monthly meetings at X time. It just depends on how you want to put it in there. So you need to put in there about how many meetings you have, and what's expected at the meetings, quorum requirements. I usually just say majority rules. You want to make sure you have a majority. That's why you always want to have an odd number of members. However, there will be times, and then that's something else you need to set up. You need to set up how people can vote. If somebody is not there at the meeting, does their vote count? So you have to make sure you put information in, say, if someone is, and I'm just making up something, if somebody is, we're not going to take meetings by the phone because we need a person to be here. So if they can't join in person, then their vote won't count. So those are things, and that's not how it has to be. I'm just giving you something so you could, an example so you can see. But you want to make sure that you clearly state and say, these are the reasons why a person's vote, when you can and can't vote. You know, if somebody's on a probationary period, which is something that I like to talk about, when you're putting people on the board, once you've established your board and you start putting people in, people on probationary periods for your board are not, should not be voting. So, and I think we talked a little bit about that last week about the probationary period. I always suggest that you just don't throw somebody on your board. You give them 90 days, give them 90 days to see if there's somebody that can work out, if they're going to be, if their work ethic reaches up to what you have, if they have anything to really contribute. And if you feel good about working with these people, because after all, the chemistry of the board is everything. And once you're able to say, okay, this is a good fit for us, then they become voters. But before then, they shouldn't be able to vote on anything that you have going on. And then just have to make sure that we have notice of requirements for the meetings. You know, when are we going to meet? What time are we going to meet? And how long? You know, do we have to have a week notice before we set up a meeting? There has to be some type of qualifier there, because otherwise I can call you and say, okay, we got a meeting in 5 minutes and we're voting. That, so we have to make sure we have time there. All right, membership. Talk a little bit about membership. Membership is for those people that have, it's like maybe the Lions clubs, some of the sororities, fraternities, things like that, where people are actually members. Most of the times in some of the membership organizations, they have to pay a certain amount of money to be a part of an organization. So that's kind of what this is. And you have to talk about the criteria. So you have to pay $100 fee every year to be a part of this board. And then what your responsibilities are as, a paid member, and will you get anything different than people who are not paid members, things like that. There's a lot there. If you're a paid member of this particular board, then these are the things that happen. And when I say paid member, a person that pays into their membership or something like that to be a board member, those are things we have to iron out. But many people don't have, most boards you deal with that are in charitable cases don't have memberships. So that's mostly for the other types of boards. Most 501c3s, you won't see that. All right. Y'all don't have any questions so far? I guess not. All right. So the next thing is committees. Now, committees, usually committees are different people. Like if you have a board and you have people that want to do certain things, you're going to have, let's say you're going to have this big fundraiser. You have different people on committees. You'll have committee heads. There's always when you have these committees, there always needs to be one person from the board on the committee. It doesn't necessarily have to be board members on the committee, but there has to be a guideline for who's going to be on that committee. So if I say I want to be on the decoration committee, that's fine, which means that I can get somebody to come in and help me with the decorations, but it is your responsibility to make sure they have, the people on the committees have no rights or any type, it's limited. They're just there. Even if they come to a board meeting so they can understand what's going on, they're not voters or anything like that. They're just a part of a committee. The only way they're voting is if they're already on the board. And some boards are big enough where everybody on the boards are, they have big enough where their committees are all board members. I've seen that before too. But in most cases, it's not. It's finding people that can help you do what you need to get done. Now, conflicts of interest. With conflicts of interest, that's exactly what it is. It's kind of like, you got to walk the slippery slope to see what happens. When you have people, it's a couple things. One example, your board members. Make sure your board members have been vetted, because you certainly don't want a board member that's not allowed to work with children and you have a youth facility. That's a conflict of interest. You don't want let's see, if you're going to be getting grants and a liability, that's right, Nakia. And if you're going to be getting grants from the bank down the street, you don't want someone from the board to be a board member on your board, because that's going to cause a conflict for interest for them both ways, because it puts you in a better light to be able to get the grant because somebody's on your board, and then they're able to push the decisions. So you don't want that. So even if they are on your board, they're not allowed to vote when it has something to do with that particular grant, things like that. So you have to make sure that people and their connections, that's the biggest thing, and then you don't want people on the board. I think you did ask last time, Stacy, about different people being on the board. You certainly don't want two board members to be on the same board of other boards. All right, I see a question. It says, what and how do you recommend that board members get vetted? Good question, Ruby. Good question. So when you're talking about board members and them becoming vetted, what we're doing is you have to, first of all, whoever's doing I guess, if it's the president or if it's the group of you guys looking for the person, I think the best thing to do is set up an all good time interview. See who they are. Before you even ask of them, you sit down and say, hey, I've identified, Jenny Long over here, and she seems to be a great person. I've watched what she's doing. Let's talk to her and see if she's someone, if she would like to be a part of the board. And then you guys sit down. You need to kind of have some conversation. And my thing is that I have a checklist. All the things you're looking for in a board member, the things that require, how much time in a week do you have? Ask them. You may say, okay, we need a board member that has at least 10 hours a month, let's just say. So when we're going down the list and we're asking questions, we may not even ask them that. We just might need to ask them, what's your time schedule look like? What are things? Because there are decisions and things that you'll have to make based on what they're saying to you. And you don't want to give them something where they're going to check off all the boxes and say, yes, I can do this, this, and that's not what's happening. So you want to have kind of a checklist of things to do it. And that's the same thing if someone approaches you and say, I'd like to be a part of your board. It's the same thing. They're not automatically on. They need to be vetted. We need to ask what they are. And then in certain cases, I'm not going to say all the time you have to do background checks, but in certain cases, depending on what they're going to be doing, you do need to do it. And it does not, if there's something in their past, it doesn't mean that they are disqualified. It depends on what it is and what it is you're doing. That goes back to what I was saying about now, if you're going to get a treasurer, you certainly don't want somebody who has had issues with maybe bad checks or stuff like that to be working on as a treasurer. But there's no problem maybe for them to do your secretary, be a secretary. You see what I'm saying? So you have to vet it. You have to know it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. It's not always a 1, 2, 3, but you do need a checklist so that you know the things you're looking for on the basis. And then you get a little bit more personal when you're talking about the things they're going to be working with you on. So, yep, I like what she put in there. She said vetting process, interview, review board member, checklist, time available to do the work for the nonprofit, background checks where applicable, and then everything is just adaptable. You can change, but it's just kind of like, it's whatever. That's the reason why it's going to be key for the first 3 people that are on that board to be able to work together to do those things. So, and then making sure people are disclosing information. That's part of the conflict of interest. Making sure people are able to say, hey, you know what? I've got, this is what I've got going on. Is this going to cause an issue? A lot of times it may not be that it's going to cause an issue, but at least you're in front of it so you understand what's going on. The biggest issues are usually when you don't know about it. So just making sure people do that. All right, and I am on my getting ready to get on the last slide here. So I need you guys to ask questions. We're talking about amendments, indemnification, and dissolution. Amendments is just revising the bylaws. And when you do that, that's one of those meetings that you can, now I wouldn't say, I think there should be a time every year that you might amend the bylaws. I don't think that's something that should be able to happen every meeting unless it's something like really emergency, but usually that's not the case. I think that a bylaw amendment should be done at one of your annual meetings, your annual meeting that I call the meeting where you do your budgets and things like that. Then it should be put forth. Now for a vote. Now anytime throughout the year, you could submit amendments based on what's happening. But I would suggest having one session a year where you vote on amendments so that everything doesn't get messed up. So let's see, who on the board maintains the bylaw? Is that automatically the secretary? In most cases, yes. Your secretary is usually the person that maintains the bylaws. They make sure they stay, that they are lawful. They're the ones that if something comes up, they discuss it and let people know. Yes. Most definitely. Good question. And then and like I kind of said, the voting process for the amendments, just making sure we have a time when we know we're going to vote on those amendments. Anybody can, it could be that things are changing and they need to submit an amendment, or better yet, it may be a benefit we might want to have. It could be we've gotten access to we've gotten access to a healthcare spa or something, and we can put in there, you know, all board members, you know, right? I mean, it's not saying you can't use it before, but you want it to be on paper to say, hey, all board members, if you're in good standing, are allowed to use this membership, things like that. Those are the things you want to be able to put into the minutes, because if you don't, I mean, into your bylaws, because if you don't, later on, it will cause an issue. So, and then provisions for protecting board members and officers from personal liability. Number one, those background checks that we talked about, that helps. Number two, the protection on the board member, the initial founding board member, not to be removed. That's another one. And number three, just making sure that everybody stays lawful. You don't want people on your board that's breaking the laws all the time. I'm not talking about speeding tickets and things like that, but I'm talking about just things that don't make a good look on your organization, because people can end up suing your organization based on a board member that's sitting there, believe it or not. So if I have a board member that has been unlawful in some areas and I'm trying to serve the public, it could be viewed as a danger. So no problem, Miss Kathy. So it could be viewed as a danger. So those are things we need to look at. Now, dissolution. The dissolution of a board, every board has to have the same dissolution clause that says where you're going to, who's going to get your assets after your nonprofit is dissolved. That's pretty much what it is. And in a 501c3, assets are supposed to go to another nonprofit, unless we are in a space where we have done something with some real estate, and it says, and these are things that you would have to do with a lawyer. I have seen where if your nonprofit is dissolved and say ABC Real Estate gave it to you for $1 to use for a lifetime, but in that lease or in that protection, there's something that says, if you guys dissolve, it goes back. Those are the things that you have to look at. So dissolution, making sure everything in there, whether it's intellectual property, whether it's real estate property, and whether it's just stuff like copiers and things. And even if there's money in there, generally the money goes after that debts have been paid from the organization, that money goes to another organization, another nonprofit organization of choice. So those are all of my things for the actual bylaws. You guys have been very, very good about listening. Now I need you to ask some questions. I know you've got questions, Miss Stacy. Oh, okay. One down here, Mr. Rome says, is there a specific place where the bylaws should be stored? When a person joins the organization via board or committee, do they sign off on the bylaws? Good question. The first part of that question is there a specific place? Yeah, we usually, a physical copy is usually kept somewhere, and if you don't have a building or something, a physical copy is usually kept with most of the officers. The officers usually keep a physical signed copy. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you have a notarized copy so that works. So that's one of the things. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I do apologize. But there's no place like, I mean, you know, if you have a safe, it is a good place to put one away somewhere in a safe, a fireproof safe that, you know, so that you can pull it out for whatever reason. You always want that because, you know, there are divisive people in this world that'll try to change things. If you have a paper copy somewhere, put it, and then take another, an electronic copy and lock it somewhere as well. I would say both. But on the paper copy, you always want to date it, sign it, and then you put it up, because then that's proof of when it, you know, when you put it up. Let's see. A person joins the organization via board or committee. Do they sign off? Well, when they sign that they are going to be a board member, then that means in that information about the board member, they're signing that they will actually abide by those bylaws. So they don't have to sign on the bylaws themselves, but they are saying that they are going to abide by the bylaws themselves. There's another question above.
Yes, Ruby had mentioned something about not being denied seeing the bylaws. It's right above from.
Let me see. Oh, I observed. Oh, okay, I see it. I observed where a member requested to see bylaws, but a board member denied sharing it. Is that lawful? That is not lawful. That is not lawful. Every board member should have access to the bylaws. That's the reason why they're there, because that's the reason, that's the governance. That's the reason why you have the bylaws, so that it is open, it is transparent, so people can see what's going on. Every member should have a copy of those bylaws. That's what I was saying. Yeah, everyone should have one. If you're on that board, you should have a copy of the bylaws, period. When you do the annual meeting, even when the bylaws change, everybody gets a new copy of the bylaws. Because if you don't have them, your people can do things that are against what you already put in place. So no, that was not lawful. And that should have been brought to the board. And if not, then there could be some legal, things happening against them. Recourse. That was good. I'm sorry I missed that earlier.
Is that the same for committee members as well that aren't like paid members, for people who are on different levels of membership, not necessarily on the board, but they're a member of the org itself? They all have access?
Committee members don't have to have access, but it is good to let them have some access just because of transparency.
Got it.
Because if a committee member is already a board member, they already have it. But if there's somebody from the outside, it's not necessary that they have it. It's not a necessity. But if they wanted to see it, I don't see where there should be an issue with being able to see the bylaws. Yes, Ms. Florence.
When you're applying for grants or maybe donor letters and stuff, and the donor actually say, "Can I view your bylaws first before I make the decision?" I'm just asking, can that happen? And if so, do you actually present your bylaws to them so that they can see? Or
if they ask for them, they want to see how you're governed. I can't, and some places may ask for them and you have to upload them in some of these different ones, but some people may ask for them, but in my experience, it's not all the time. It's not an all the time, but you will have some that will ask.
And so when it's okay, it's like by law, you have to present them with those, correct? I'm just asking. So
you don't have to give it to them, but the problem is if you don't give it to them, you're probably not going to get that grant.
Exactly. Makes sense. Okay, thanks.
So that's the only thing.
Sarah had a question as well in the chat.
What is the legality of board members receiving stipends from the organization? Okay, that's a real good question. The legality of it is that board members shouldn't be receiving stipends of any sort. Okay. A board member, here's the thing, and you have to be very careful. If you give the board members, no monies should ever be given to board members. You can give them a gift card, but be very careful. Be very, very careful, because I'm trying to turn this ringer off. I don't know why, so I'm sorry. But be very, very careful, because there's a thin line, and Ruby knows, she's a tax person. There's a thin line between those gifts and that money, but no tangible money needs to come in. You can correct me, Ruby, if you need to.
That sounds right.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not the tax professional, but I do know that we have to be careful when we are doing that. So gifts are one thing, but be careful what kind of gifts. So if I say, all right, for Christmas, we're going to give everybody $50 gift cards, fine. But they need to be gift cards, because if you give them a check, that's payment. A gift card I can show on the books, but be careful for that, because you don't want someone to look at it as payment if you're giving too many of those. So yes, so there's a little bit there, we just have to be careful.
Okay, Stacy had a question. You want Stacy to be the last one, Janine?
Okay, what's the question? Oh, she's gonna answer. Go ahead.
So we're a public benefit corporation. Shouldn't our bylaws and all of our books be available to whoever asks for it?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Mr. Joseph, I see you're up there. We have time for you. Go ahead.
Hello. Thank you for all the information.
Yes.
You helped me think of a couple questions. So what might be some good things to put in place to so me and my wife are founder and co-founder, and we're on the board, and like what I mean, just hearing what you just explained, I feel like something should be in place where it's not just me and her. It's like, even though it's me and her, I feel like I'm to help, with accountability. Should we have like some? I don't know what I'm trying to ask, but I know some people that don't live in the house should be here.
I kind of understand what you're saying. The key word you used was accountability. So that is what you want. When you have a husband and wife team, the next person that you add to that particular team needs to be someone that's not related to either one of you. Because you do have to have checks and balances. And really soon, when you have a husband and wife team, I always suggest people, when you're starting out and have a husband and wife team, you need to have 5 people on your board, because then that takes away from it being the family thing going on. So yes, most definitely. And so you just you'll put your people on your board, get people together. And then, like I said, then that way it doesn't look like, okay, it's just my husband and wife. We're the majority here. We want more than that. You need to have it where you have the other 3 board members need to be people that are totally from different walks of life that are able to put into your organization, but they're not related to you.
Okay, so it's a good thing I'm not on the board then.
Oh, I didn't realize. I thought you said you were on the board. Oh yeah, it's a great thing. You can be in it without having.
Okay. No, yeah, yeah. Okay, no, yeah, thank you for the clarity.
Yes. All right. So with his question being the last one, because it's 4:56, I'm really, really excited working with you guys. And let me tell you, if you need anything, Nakia, make sure you put my contact information down there in the chat. If you've got more questions, or if we need to set up a time to just have a conversation, let me know, because there's so much more information out there. This was just the short of it. This wasn't the long piece of it. This was just the short part of it, because there's so much more. There's so many things to talk about, especially when you're talking about conflicts of interest, board members, and talking about what needs to be in those bylaws. There is a lot. So just want to make sure I answered everybody's questions. And if you have anything after this, please feel free to email me. The last time my email was full. People were emailing me back and forth with questions. So have no issues. And I will answer back if you email me. So with that being said, we're going to close out Lunch and Learn for today. And
Thank you.
Wonderful. And thank you guys for everything, for showing up. And I'm sure next week, Michael will be back at 100% there. And just looking forward to to more lunch and learns.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
You guys enjoy your day.
Thanks, Janine.
Bye.